Hello everyone, my name is Jane and welcome to my August wrap-up. So like you can see, I read a lot of books in August and the reason is actually because I was sick in COVID this month. Don't worry, I'm totally okay. Everything is fine now, I'm not sick anymore, but I was sick this month and because of it I was in quarantine. Like you can understand, I read a lot of books during my quarantine. I read 17 books, which is really amazing, and I'm pretty sure that this wrap-up is going to be very long, so I think that let's just start with the reading stats of the month, which is for me the most fun part in wrap-ups. Now, like I said, I read 17 books and I read a lot of pages. Now, formats, I read 12 physical books, 4 audiobooks and 1 ebook, and this is amazing because usually most of my reading each month is audiobooks. I do read a lot of physical books, but it's usually max 7-8 books a month, and because I was in quarantine, I just read so many physical books, which is amazing, and I read less audiobooks because I was in quarantine and I usually listen to audiobooks on my way to work. So yes, it was a big physical reading month. Now, age group, I read 12 YA books, 4 adult books and 1 middle grade. And honestly, I never thought that I'm going to say middle grade in those stats, because if you are not new to my channel, you know that I never read middle grade, but I read a middle grade this month, and spoiler, I really loved it. And standalones versus series, I read 10 standalones and 7 series, which is actually really surprising to me because I felt like this is a really big series reading month. I just finished a lot of series. I also started a lot of series, so I felt like I read a lot of series, but apparently I read more standalones. And now genres. And I read this month 5 fantasy books, 4 thrillers, 3 romances, 3 graphic novels, 1 dystopia and 1 horror. And yes, I know that graphic novel is not a genre, but I feel like it's sort of a genre. I just feel like I'm thinking about graphic novels separately and books that I read. Now, this is also interesting because usually romance is my highest read genre. I do really love romance, but the biggest reason is because I usually read a lot of audiobooks and they are usually more contemporary romance audiobooks. But my most read genre this month was fantasy, which was my exact goal last month. I always read so much fantasy and this year I didn't read a lot of fantasy, so I'm just trying to get more into fantasy again. And yes, it's also nice that I'm really getting into thrillers. Once I never read thrillers and I started a few months ago, and since then I'm just reading a lot of thrillers. And yes, I just love dystopia, and also horror is nice. No star ratings. This is very interesting. First of all, like you can see, I had 5 stars. Oh my god. No, for me 5 stars are a big deal. I almost didn't have any 5 stars this year. I'm just really picky about my 5 stars, and I wish that all of my reads were 5 stars, but unfortunately it isn't. But every month that I have 5 stars is really amazing. I also have 5 4-star reads, which is really good. Like 4 stars are books that I really enjoyed. I have 2 3.5 stars, which is okay. It's like better than average. I do have 6 3 stars, but it's also okay. Like you will always read average books. I feel like most of my ratings are 3 stars, and unfortunately I read 2 2-star reads. Although you see a lot of 2 and 3 stars, I do think that overall it was a really good reading month because I had a lot of 4 stars and I had a 5 star, which is again a really big deal. Of course it could be better, but I still enjoyed most of the books that I read, and I especially enjoyed the act of reading, which is the most important thing. So yes, I'm really excited. So let's start talking about the books. Now, the first book that I read this month is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. This is basically an adult romance, new release, and basically the main character of the story, I think 20 years old, and basically she has money. She always got money from her stepfather, and she never worked a day in her life. But in the start of the story, her family is mad because something she has done, and her punishment is to go live in the town where her father that passed away grew up, and the point is for her to learn how to live and how to be independent. And of course, she's falling in love with one of the sailors, I think, and I read it in audiobook and I just loved it. It was such a fun romance story. I enjoyed it so much. It was so fun to listen to. Also a great audiobook, great plot, great characters, like I really connected to the story. It was just really fun and really refreshing. An amazing summer read for the last month of the summer. I just really enjoyed it, and it was in a port town, and just everything was really fun. This is a book that I will definitely recommend. I'm still thinking about it until today. It just was really fun. I gave it 4 stars. I just really enjoyed it. I would definitely be checking more of Tessa Bailey books. And there is also a sequel that is going to be released next year about the sister of the main character. So I'm really excited also to read the sequel when it will be released. And yes, this is a really great book. Now, the second book that I read is The Tool by Neil Shusterman. This is the fourth and the final book in the Scythe trilogy, and I'm so happy that I actually finished this trilogy. I don't want to do any spoilers. So basically Scythe, the first book in the series, is about a utopian world where everyone can live forever and the computer controls everything but in a good way, and because there isn't enough of resources for everyone, there is Scythes, and the Scythe job is to kill people. I talked about this series a lot in my channel before because I really enjoyed the first book. Now unfortunately this is my least favorite book of the series. I really loved the first one. I was pretty disappointed from the second one, but I still was really impressed. But my problem with the fourth book is that it just didn't impress me. Again, the first two books really impressed me. They were really amazing and just made me think so much about life and about the meaning of life and everything. But something in this book just didn't connect to me. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was still an enjoyable read, especially because of the world and the characters themselves. I also think that the ending is nice and I'm really happy that I read it. But overall it was a pretty disappointment because I really expected to love it, but it still was really enjoyable and I finished the series, which is amazing. And yes, I do think it's a really good series and the ending was really nice. Now the fourth book that I read is the second audiobook before my big audiobook break. This is The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware, and this is a thriller, and basically the main character of the story gets this job where she needs to be the nanny of 3 children in a house that is pretty much in middle of nowhere. And when she arrives to this house, a lot of strange things starts to happen. It's like those kind of books that you are not sure if this is supernatural or not, and I really loved it. It was such an amazing audiobook. The narrator was so good and made the story so thrilling and so spooky, and it was just so good. I really enjoyed the characters and the plot and how everything went. I also really loved the ending, which is a mixed opinion because not everyone was satisfied from the ending, but I personally really loved it. I think that if you loved Lock Every Door by Riley Sager, you would really love it. It's my second Ruth Ware book that I'm reading. I didn't expect to love it this much, but it was so fun. I just really wanted to keep listening again and again, and yes, it was just so good. And I gave it 4 stars. I'm not sure that I said it. Now the next book is The Wicked Deep by Shea Earnshaw, and this is my 5-star of the month. Not only now, after I thought about the book, I can say that definitely this is the best book that I read in 2021. Now basically, this book is following the cursed town of Sparrow. This is a gloomy town, and this town has a curse because 200 years ago, the town people killed 3 sisters because they thought that those sisters are witches. And since then, every year, those sisters are coming back into town and kills boys. Now, I actually made a whole review video about this book because I just loved it so much. You can check it here. So I will make it really quick. But basically, this is a dark fantasy story. It means that this is a very gloomy, sort of a horror spooky fantasy book, but especially atmospheric. The writing here is so beautiful. I cried so much from this book. This is just those kind of writings that make you really be in the story itself. I think that the plot was amazing. The characters were amazing. I just enjoyed it so much. And yes, it was so amazing. I can't stop thinking about this book. I just loved it so much. Now, the next book is Caraval by Stephanie Garber, and this is the first book in the Caraval trilogy. Now, this is basically a fantasy story about a teenager who always wanted to go to this magical Caraval, and now she's finally getting a ticket a little bit before she's getting married, and she's going to this Caraval with her sister, but her sister is getting kidnapped by the mastermind of the Caraval. Now, really wanted to love this book. Like, really. I think that the idea is really good. The cover is gorgeous. Like, I really wanted to read this aesthetically circus-themed book. So unfortunately, it was my worst book that I read this month. And not only, this book put me in such a big slump. Yes, I read a lot this month, but after I read this book, I didn't read anything for a week. It doesn't seem a lot, but first of all, it's a lot for me. And second, I also couldn't listen to audiobooks. Like, I just couldn't read anything, and nothing ever made me stop reading audiobooks. I felt like I was just in such a big slump. It disappointed me so much. Didn't connect to the main character and to the love interest. And I feel like most of the story was around them, and I just really didn't like the personality of the main character. Also, the character that I wanted to see the most wasn't in this book at all. I just felt so unsatisfied. Really expected this aesthetic circus, and I felt like I just didn't connect it to the writing of the author and to how she described things, because it just wasn't vivid for me in any way. I couldn't imagine anything. Just something in here didn't work for me. Though I'm DNFing the whole trilogy, I'm actually not sure. I do really interested to read the second book because the second book is following the sister of the main character of this book, basically following another character. And from what we saw from her sister, I loved her sister so much more than the main character. I actually really want to give the second book a chance because I just think it will be really different from this one. But unfortunately, Caraval wasn't for me. And yes, 2 stars, really unfortunately. I wish I loved this book, but I just didn't. Now, like I said, I was in a slump for something like a week, and then I got into quarantine. And this is the reason that I got out of the slump, because I had just so much time. And I read so many books. And the first book that I read in the quarantine was The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. It seems like nobody knows how to pronounce his name, but I read it physically in my native language. Now, this is basically an adult thriller, and it's following the story of Alicia. And Alicia basically lived a perfect life until one day, out of nowhere, she just killed her husband. And since then, she just stopped talking. She just didn't talk about anything. Nobody understand if she's muted or not. And this thriller got amazing reviews. Like, people say that this is really mind-blowing. I actually really enjoyed reading this book, but unfortunately, overall, it wasn't amazing. I gave it, in the end, 3 stars. It happens a lot with really hyped books because they are just so hyped up and you can't not expect a lot. But I don't think that this is a bad book. Like, I enjoyed my time reading it. I just don't think that the end is amazing. Like, for me, the plot twist was pretty meh. I would like to see something else. But in the end, it was a really quick read. I read it in a day. And it also got me out of my mini reading slump. It just was so quick, and I think that this is a really good book to get you out of a reading slump. And again, yes, overall it wasn't the best read, but I did enjoy my time with it. And yes, it was fun. Now, the second book that I read in quarantine was Nevermoor by Jessica Townsend, the first book in the series. And this is the middle grade that I read this month. Now, this is the original cover, but like you can see, the cover in my native language is so beautiful. I think it's actually the French cover, and my country just copied the French cover. But this is so pretty, so I'm just going to hold it instead of the photo. Now, basically, it's following, I think, an 11-year-old girl, and this girl is basically cursed, and she's going to die in her 12th birthday. But in the day that she's going to die, someone takes her from her home and takes her to the magical city of Nevermoor. And so many reviews about the story said that this is a combination of Harry Potter and Alice in Wonderland, and I agree so much, because it just felt in the start with the taking from the family like Harry Potter, and then the whole magical city of Nevermoor. It was so fun. I never expected to love a middle grade this much, and actually in the first part of the story, I wasn't sure what I'm feeling, because this is just so different from the things that I usually read. Usually I don't enjoy those more middle grade books because I do love more of a mature thinking and just mature plot, and maybe because I didn't expect anything from it, I loved it so much. I think that in the second half of the book, when I already got used to this kind of language, it got so fun to me. I also think that the writing is really beautiful. Like, although this is a middle grade, the writing is in 4th person. It was really fun, and I actually think that the plot was really good. Like, also the characters, also the plot, it was really fast paced. I really enjoyed it. I already got the second book. I really want to continue the series. Like, I never expected to continue a middle grade series, but again, it was really fun. I gave it 4 stars. One of the more enjoyable reads this month, and I read it really fast. Now, the 4th book is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and this is a YA thriller mystery book. Basically, the main character of the story one day gets a message that some kind of really big billionaire wants to inherit all of his money to her, although that he doesn't know her. And this is very weird because she's just a girl without any money, and then she becomes this really big billionaire. But the thing is that she needs to live for a whole year in his mansion, and in his mansion there is the billionaire 4 grandsons, so there is a lot of romance, and I actually really loved it in the start. The first 100 pages, something like this, I really enjoyed the story. It was so fun. I really enjoyed the writing. It has really short chapters, and I do get the hype around this book. I do think that the idea is really good, but after the start, something just didn't connect to me in this book. In the start, I gave it 3 stars, but I did change it to 2.5 stars, because unfortunately, in the middle and in the end, I did feel like I forced myself to keep reading, just because the start was really good and I really wanted for the end to be good too. I think that I just felt so unsatisfied from the end. The twist I didn't love. It was pretty predictable, and I felt like there was so much build up to the twist, and I really wanted to know what is the truth behind what is happening. Because there was so much build-up and so much expectation, the end was so unsatisfying and so disappointing. And this is also a part of a series, but unfortunately I want to be continue reading the series. I really wanted to love it. The start was so fun, but no way that I'm going to read a sequel. So yes, unfortunately in the end it was just 2.5 stars. Now the next book that I read is my first graphic novel of the month, and this is Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell and Faith Erin Hicks. And this is a really fall themed graphic novel. The illustrations here are so pretty. Now this is basically following two teenagers that every year works in this Halloween festival, and this is their last year because they are going to go to college next year. So this is basically their last night in this festival that they worked in for so long. I actually gave it in the start 4 stars, but I lowered it to 3 stars. I feel like I'm really generous with my ratings to graphic novels because just the experience of reading a graphic novel is really fun to me, and I did felt bad to give it 3 stars because I think that the illustration style is one of my most favorite illustrations that I ever read from. The colors are just so vibrant. I don't know, it's just so pretty. Like everything is so pretty, and it made me really excited for the fall. But overall it felt a little bit pointless to me. Like I loved the whole idea, but I didn't fully connect to it. And yes, it was fun. It's a graphic novel. It's really short. It's really sweet. It feels a little bit young, but overall it was a really enjoyable read. Now the next book is a new fantasy series that I started, and this is The Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. And this is a YA urban fantasy. I also read it in my native language. I usually don't read a lot of urban fantasies. I don't have anything against it, but I just didn't pick a lot of urban fantasies. And basically the main character of the story is a teenager that learns art in Prague, which is so cool. And the thing is that her family is half humans, half animals. They are really weird and different, and because of it also the main character is really different. And then the main character is meeting an angel, and they are sort of enemies. I actually really enjoyed this book. I did want to love it. It was just so different from what I expected, also because this is an urban fantasy and I usually don't read urban fantasies, but also the writing and the plot and the characters, everything was really unique, not similar to things that I read in the past. Something just felt different here, and it was really enjoyable. The romance is a little bit of an instant laughing, which I really can get why some people don't love, but I personally think like it was made well in this book. I really enjoyed reading it. I read it really fast. I honestly didn't want the story to be over. I'm going to read the rest of the trilogy in September. I really want to pretty much binge it and read it really quick because it was just really fun to read. I really hope not to be disappointment from the rest of the books in the series. Yes, I'm just really excited to read the rest of the series. And now I have another graphic novel, and this is The Girl from the Sea by Molly Knox Osterhag. This is a really cute graphic novel. This is actually a new release, which is amazing. The illustration style is so beautiful. It's very summer vibes because basically the main character of the story lives in this port town like near the sea, and one day she meets a girl that came from the sea. She isn't a mermaid, she's something else, but this is basically a sapphic story. This is very coming of age, and this is a lot about romance but also a lot about family and friendship. Now I always really love reading graphic novels, but I just loved it so much. Like I didn't expect to love it this much. First of all, again, the illustrations are really beautiful. Also here you have the two main characters kissing. They are just really cute. I also really love the format because there was a little bit of text messages, like it was just really fun. But yes, I just feel like it had a really good combination of all of the coming of age things. Like again, not just romance, also friendship and also family. Just everything was really good. I actually really love the ending. Like I love where the story went. It is a little bit young, but I feel like a lot of coming of age stories are like this. I just was really surprised. I'm really recommending it. Again, it's a new release, so let's hype this up. One of my most favorite graphic novels that I ever read, like honestly. I really enjoyed it. Great summer read, and just so adorable. And I was actually reading it for a readathon that I wanted to participate in, but unfortunately I wasn't in the mood to read a book in that weekend, and I wanted to read another graphic novel. I just say to myself, hey, maybe I will read another one. It was pretty fun, so I decided to read This One Summer by Mariko Tamaki and Gillian Tamaki because I just felt like what I wanted to read was really this more sad, gloomy story. This is basically following a teenager. This teenager always went to a summer vacation with her family in this island, and in this island she had a best friend, but but this is their last summer together because our parents are getting divorced, and this is their last vacation. So it's basically a coming-of-age sad story about friendship. And if you know, Mariko Tamaki is the author of Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, which is my most favorite graphic novel ever. So of course I expected a lot from it, because it's from the same author, it's not from the same illustrator, but seeing the illustrations, I was sure that I'm going to love them. And I actually saw a lot of reviews telling a lot of really good things about his style of illustrations. So many reviews in Goodreads really love the illustrations, but I don't know why, something for me personally, I didn't really love the style. Not only that, I was so disappointed. I started with this book, and in the start I wasn't sure what to think about it, but I just felt unsatisfied from the whole story. Nothing felt complete here, and I do understand that some stories are more with an open ending, and this is totally okay, but I just felt like the whole story was just too open. I gave it in the start 3 stars, but I lowered it 2 stars because I just kept thinking how bad this book was. It isn't really bad, I just felt like it wasn't for me, and I was extra disappointed because I expected so much. I really wanted to love it. I also was really in the mood to read it. This was like the perfect vibe that I wanted to read, but after I read the thought of it, just started to feel not good for me. Something didn't felt right for me. I just personally didn't love it. Now the next book is another thriller, and this is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I also read it in my native language. This is basically a thriller about a wedding, and this wedding is taking place in a deserted island in a really old castle, and the 2 people who are getting married are pretty famous, like they have a lot of money, and the whole wedding is really pretty, and there is a lot of POVs in the story, and it was actually really fun. I really enjoyed especially the first part of the book. I love the characters. I am more of a plot-driven reader, but I feel like in this book, what made the book more enjoyable for me were the characters. I just really love them. I love their personalities, their backstories. Something just felt really good there, but in the end I gave it 3 stars. It was fun, it was an enjoyable read. I do get the hype around this book. I just think that my main problem with the book is that it didn't felt like a thriller. Nothing felt thrilling to me. I wasn't with this feeling when you are reading a thriller where you just need to know what is going to happen. I just felt like this is more of a rich people drama, which is an amazing niche, and I really love those kind of books, but I feel like the mystery and the thriller aspect of the book didn't satisfy me. You also don't know something really big about what's happening in the island, and I feel like it just made the story less enjoyable because I just didn't know anything, and I didn't had any clues that made me want to keep reading. So in the end, it wasn't really thrilling. I enjoyed the characters. The character of the bride itself was my favorite one, Jules. I really loved that character. And yes, in the end, it was enjoyable, just not as much, and I was a little bit disappointed. Now the next book, Sky Beyond the Storm by Savateir. This is the only book that I read in an ebook, and this is the 4th and the final book in the Ember in the Ashes series. I read it for our Ember in the Ashalon read-along of the series. We're finally finished with the series, which is really exciting. I don't want to say too much because this is a series. I don't want to do spoilers. It's basically a YA fantasy dystopia series, and unfortunately it was my least favorite book of the series. I will link our final live show discussing the book. It was really fun to talk about it if you want to see more information about it. So I won't tell a lot because again I don't want to do any spoilers. I'm not giving it a rating because unfortunately I actually really wanted to DNF it. It's the last book in the series and also for a live show. So I just kept reading it, but I just feel like I'm not in the right place to give it a star rating. So this is just without any star rating, and if you want to see more, you can check our live show video. And the next book is Tweet Cute by Emma Lord. Finally, an audiobook. This is after I got back into work, a YA romance contemporary story, and basically the 2 main characters of the story are teenagers, and their parents are owning restaurants, but those restaurants are getting into some kind of war on Twitter. But the 2 main characters of the story are the ones who send in the tweets because they are teenagers and they are understanding Twitter better than adults. So this is basically enemies to lovers. I would say more friends to enemies to lovers. Now Emma Lord is the author of You Have a Match, which was one of my most favorite audiobooks of the year. I loved it so much. So again, I did have big expectations for this book, and unfortunately I was disappointed. I gave it 3 stars. I actually do think that this book was really nice. I feel like my biggest problem was that the main plot of the story with all the wit war just wasn't for me. Something in the plot wasn't fun, just wasn't interesting for me, and I actually really enjoyed the characters and the other plots of the story. There was more plots and more things to the story. There was also a plot with an app, and I just felt like the other plots were really, really fun and really amazing. But the problem is that most of the story was around this tweet war, and I wanted to hear more about the other plots. So this is the main reason that I didn't enjoy the book, although I really, really wanted to, like, again, another author that I really enjoyed, that I was really disappointed. Emma Lord does release, I think, an adult debut in January, so I'm really anticipating this. But unfortunately, Tweet Cute just wasn't for me. I still really recommend you have a match. It's amazing audiobook. But yes, it was fun to get back into audiobooks. Reading a fun by romance contemporary, it was just really, really fun. And because I almost didn't read any romance this month, except Tweet Cute, I read also XOXO by XOXO. This is a new release. Now, before I will start telling about the book, you see this gorgeous cover. So under the dust jacket, it looks like this. Like, what? I already showed it in my birthday book haul. This is so pretty. So yes, I was really in a romance mood because I didn't read a lot of romances. And now basically the main character of the story, Jenny, is a teenager who always dreamed to be a cello artist. And basically this teenager meets a K-pop idol. She doesn't know that he is a K-pop idol because she doesn't listen to K-pop. She is Korean American, but she just met him in the US because he was in a trip in the US and they are getting along with each other. And then he goes back to Seoul and they don't keep on connection until the main character of the story goes also to Seoul for one semester to visit her grandmother with her mother. And of course, she's going to the same school as the K-pop idol. Now, I love books about Korea, about K-pop. I just really, really love this concept. I would read books about Korea and about K-pop non-stop. It was so fun to go back into Seoul. I was in Seoul something like 3-4 years ago. It made me really miss the city. I also really love K-pop. And I really loved the story, but I had a really big problem with it because it felt really young to me. Now, I feel like this is the problem with YA books. You don't always know how young or how old it's going to be because I feel like the mentality is really different in the YA range of age. And this happens. Sometimes you read a YA book, it just feels young to you. It's okay, it just wasn't for my age group. But it felt bad to me because the main character of the story is 17 and the whole plot and the decisions that she needs to make are for adults. Honestly, the characters felt to me like 14 years old characters, like in the mentality and in the way they speak. It didn't feel to me like 17 years old teenagers, and it's okay if they aren't, but I would love to see a more mature mentality, especially because the age of the character, like I was 17, I know how is it to be 17 years old, and I feel like they were really childish to this age, and actual 17 years old teenagers in the real world don't act like this. It was a pretty big problem for me. I still gave it 3.5 stars. It's not average for me, it's more than average. And I did really enjoy the plot, the characters. It felt like it had so much potential. I wish it felt more mature. I do think it's a really, really good book, especially for the younger crowd. Just if you want to read it, expect that it will feel a little bit young to you. But overall, like you can see, it isn't 3 stars, it's 3.5 stars. It's like more than average to me. It was a really, really fun read. And I love the cover. It was really fun to read it physically. And the last book of August, finally, so many books, is Sawkill Girls by Claire Legand. This is a YA horror, also mystery thriller, I think. I read it in an audiobook, and basically it's following 3 different teenagers who live in a town that every few years girls are disappearing from the town, just disappearing out of nowhere. And in this current time of the story, there is suddenly a lot of girls disappearing. Now, I really love YA horror. Like, I'm understanding that I love this genre so much. Also, books that I didn't really enjoy, still really love the aesthetic. I feel that the aesthetic and the plot and the weirdness of YA horror is just so fun. And I really wanted to love this book. I actually really love the start. I actually do think that the audiobook is really good. The narrator made an amazing job. But I feel like personally for me, I would probably enjoy it more physically. I don't know why. I feel like just in the writing, I would prefer to read it more slower and physically. And in the last third of the book, I didn't really felt connected. Something didn't work for me. Like, I feel like it started really good, but it just got a little bit lost in the pacing and in the plot in the middle of the book. I did like it. I'm giving it 3 stars. It was okay. I really enjoyed the atmosphere and everything with the YA horror. I feel that this aspect was really, really fun. Definitely I will be checking more by this author because it was really interesting. And yes, like, if I gave it 3 stars, I really enjoyed the genre of YA horror. It just made me want to read more YA horror, especially because we're getting to the spooky season, which is really exciting. But yes, overall a nice read. Unfortunately, it wasn't more. And yes, so this is all the books that I read in August. There was so much, like, oh my god, 17 books is a lot, but like it's amazing that I had so much time to read. I'm really excited for September. I actually have a lot of holidays in September, so I will have more time to read, which is so amazing. And yes, like overall, I do think that this was a really fun reading month. I had a 5-star, which is again amazing. Especially, I read a lot of physical books, more than I usually read every month. And yes, it was just really fun. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. But until my next one, you can check more videos by me. And I will see you in the next video. Bye everyone!